was your big takeaway from court today?
I think that the testimony that Don Richard gave and the defense really going in on some of the inconsistencies were the takeaway. So there were moments today where the defense was asking Don Richard, which, as you know, was a member of Danity, Kane, and another group that Combs had from 2004 to 2011. And what we heard today was Don Richard admitting that she was not sure why she didn't make some of her proclamations of who was at a party during an alleged assault. She said that she didn't know why she didn't say certain things in previous interviews with prosecutors.
Right. And some of those people that she failed to mention were A-list celebrities.
A-list celebrities, that's right. So there was an instance where Don Richard mentions an assault that happened at a restaurant. And she mentioned some of the names of people that Combs worked with. But when the defense asked her, well, what about the celebrities? You said there were celebrities there. Why didn't you mention those names? And she said she wasn't sure.
Wow.
But some of those names were Usher, Jimmy Iovine, she said, and Neo. She remembers being there.
You described today in the cross with the defense and Dawn as being ping pong. How so?
Yeah, so I think that it was such a rapid fire of questions from the defense when she was asking Don Richard about some of those inconsistencies that you could literally see the jurors looking back and forth at the defense and then at Don Richard. So that was the first time that I had seen that, as there was so much quick back and forth when the defense was making her arguments to Don Richard and questions really about some of those inconsistencies.
Wow. So Dawn finished her testimony today. She claimed at one point that Diddy had hit Cassie with a skillet and said, quote, he said you could go missing, that we could die. So what was the reaction in court to that statement?
Yes, so just to kind of set up the scene, the defense was saying, so did you say that Combs attempted to hit her with a skillet, or did he actually hit her with a skillet? She's pointing out that in several interviews, the story sort of changes, and Don Richard's response is, well, this was a long time ago, and sometimes my memory's, a little foggy, and I might remember things differently. But again, as a juror, if you're listening to that, it goes back to credibility, and you have someone that's facing serious time behind bars. So I think that's what they were trying to get at, that some of her stories weren't always exact to what she had previously told prosecutors as it pertains to you could go missing. So the story goes, Don Richard said she witnessed abuse, and she said that Combs said, you will go missing. She took that as a death threat. So the defense then said, well, wait a minute, in 2020 and in 2021, you reached out to Combs to work with him again. So if you were so afraid of him, why then reach out? And that was a question that she had a really tough time answering. She did admit, though, that in fact, while I did feel threatened, and yes, he did say this to me, I did reach out to him during that 2020-2021 era about working together, about collaborating again.
What did Dawn claim in her testimony about seeing Diddy with guns and drugs?
So in the testimony, she talks about seeing him with a gun sort of like in his back, but she doesn't say he ever handled it. She never saw him cock the gun or do anything with it, but she does say that she witnessed Combs with a gun sort of in the back of his clothing. When it comes to the drugs, she said that there was a drug dealer named One Stop who would come and deliver not just cocaine or Molly or ecstasy, but she said that he also had Plan B and birth control. Again, this is the drug dealer that she said his name was One Stop.
Cassie's ex-best friend Kerry Morgan also took the stand. Tell us about her testimony and claims that she herself was also assaulted by Diddy.
That's right. So Kerry Morgan, a woman from Buffalo, New York, who's pursuing a modeling career, meets Cassie when they were in their late teens. She said that she was her best friend from about 2001 to 2018, and the reason that they stopped talking is because she was assaulted by Combs. Her former best friend acknowledged that because of that assault, she did receive a settlement and signed an NDA, but received $30,000. So what I thought was interesting, Rachel, for as much as we have already heard from Cassie Ventura about the number of times that she says she was beaten up and assaulted by Sean Combs, her best friend, again, who was around at that time when she was dating Combs, said that she only saw 2 times in which Combs was physical with Ventura, once in Los Angeles and another time in Jamaica.
Is this the best friend that Cassie told Diddy that he probably would be a better fit?
Correct, because this is around the same time that they met. Very good. Last week, during the testimony, there was an email that was shown where Cassie sort of attributes maybe Combs wants to get with her friend Kerry. So Kerry Morgan, again, they're not friends anymore, they don't speak, but this is the woman who's testifying today. So at the beginning, before the jurors came in, the judge talked about being careful not to make this sort of a gossip case, if you will, or a case built on gossip were his words. So what we're seeing is the judge actually acknowledging that there's concerns from the defense about some of the statements that are being able to be read in court, or some of the evidence that's being able to be submitted. So there's this acknowledgement that, focus on the racketeering, focus on the elements of the crime, not so much on things that are hearsay or gossip-like. Thought that was interesting.
And these jurors are not sequestered by any means,
No,
right? So,
no.
I mean, you're not supposed to
Correct.
tune into news, read about it. I'm assuming now social media
Yeah.
is added to that list of things, but it's in 2025, how really is that possible?
And I have to say, this is probably the first trial where I've seen so much social media presence, TikTok, Instagram, bloggers, people out here. So even though you're not supposed to look at your phone and you're not supposed to read messages from family and friends about this case, there's a lot of information out there.
Right.
So hopefully they're doing their due diligence and making sure that they are being good jurors.
Yes.
But I imagine it would be tough.
This is the first day that we have not seen Diddy's kids in court. What does their lack of presence really mean or say to the courtroom?
That side looks a lot more empty, I can tell you that. And we know that Sean Combs' twin daughters were having their prom celebration this weekend. So I think that week one, it was clear that the presence was there. I'm sure the family wanted to be there knowing that Cassie Ventura would be testifying. But now as we're in week two, not the same presence. There are a few people that are obviously there in support of Combs. I saw a man dressed in a suit, and Combs kind of looked at him and touched his heart. So he has some supporters there, but not nearly as many as we saw during that first week, where we saw his mother. We've seen the mothers of some of his children, and things like that.